All right, get ready, because today we're going deep on conversations. Well, simple English conversations, that is.
You might think, simple, I've already got that.
I know, right?
But whether you're brushing up or just starting, I think you'll find some really useful stuff here.
Oh, absolutely. We're looking at this guide, and it's packed with tips for real-life situations, like, I don't know, greeting a new neighbor, or even just, like, confidently ordering food in English.
Yeah, and what's cool is this guide doesn't just throw phrases at you.
Yeah.
It really gets into the why, helping you understand how everyday English actually works.
It's not just about memorizing, it's understanding.
Right.
And that's how you build confidence.
Absolutely. The guide starts with conversation essentials. And one thing that I thought was really interesting was how much it emphasizes, nonverbal communication.
Body language.
Yeah, exactly. We forget how much that adds to a conversation.
Oh, it's huge. Just a smile can be as powerful as any phrase.
Especially when you're meeting someone for the first time.
Oh, for sure.
I mean, it makes you instantly more approachable, right? There's even a study in here about how people who smile are seen as more trustworthy.
Yeah.
And competent. Isn't that interesting?
It really makes you think about that resting grumpy face, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But speaking of first impressions, the guide also talks about numbers.
Numbers.
And I know you're thinking, numbers, that's basic. But hold on.
Okay.
It actually gets really interesting.
Okay, I'm listening.
They give this example of a traveler who ended up paying way too much for a souvenir because they couldn't understand the numbers the vendor was saying.
Oh, no. A travel nightmare.
The worst.
Yeah.
So it's not just about math. It's about, navigating those everyday situations.
I see your point.
Right. And that's what I love about this guide. It makes these, seemingly simple things come to life. And it makes you realize how important they are for just communicating,
Yeah.
So have you ever had any number fails, while traveling? We'd love to hear about it.
Let's move on from numbers. The guide then gets into help and navigation. I think especially when we're traveling, we can all relate to this.
Oh, totally. I mean, who hasn't been totally lost in a new city?
Right.
Desperately trying to figure out a map.
And it's those moments, that knowing how to ask for help politely becomes, essential.
Essential.
Really important, yeah. The guide even says that in some cultures, just saying, excuse me, it's not enough.
Really?
You need something more. Could you please help me? To be really polite.
It's those little things.
Yeah, those nuances.
That can really make a difference.
And I found this tip about repeating directions back. Super helpful.
Yeah.
It not only makes sure you understood, but it shows the other person you're listening, right?
Yeah, it shows you care.
You're like, hey, I'm really trying to get this right.
Exactly. Okay, so let's jump to a section I think you'll really like. Everyday scenarios.
Oh, okay.
This is where the guide really shines. It gives you these practical phrases for shopping, eating out, and even making plans.
What I like is it breaks down each situation step by step. And it explains, the thinking behind each phrase and how to use it well.
For example, with shopping, they talk about, can I try this on? Seems simple, right? But then they go deeper and explain, how you can adapt that phrase for trying on clothes, testing out electronics, or even, sampling food at a market.
It gets you thinking beyond just memorizing.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, let's talk food. Who doesn't love navigating a menu in a foreign language? This guide gives you some great phrases for ordering. But the one that I thought was interesting was that anything else that the waiter often asks.
Oh, yeah. It's like a secret code for, go ahead, order those fries.
Right. But it's so subtle, if you're not used to it.
You might miss it.
Exactly. And finally, let's talk making plans. The guide, it really stresses being clear about the time and place.
Yeah.
Which, sounds obvious, but we've all had those miscommunications.
Oh, for sure. I once ended up at, the wrong restaurant for a lunch meeting because, we both had different places in mind. Oh, the worst.
With the same name. Yeah.
Yeah.
So being specific, really important.
Yeah, you don't want those awkward moments.
Right.
So we've covered greetings, numbers, asking for help, and even just navigating those everyday situations. Feeling confident yet?
Don't worry, we're just getting started.
I know, right?
Up next, we'll be diving into the art of talking about yourself in English, which, can be surprisingly tricky, even if you've got a decent grasp of the language.
I'm intrigued.
get ready for some interesting stuff.
Yeah.
You know what I thought was interesting about this section? It's not just about listing facts about yourself.
Yeah.
It's like finding ways to connect with the other person.
Even if you don't have a huge vocabulary.
Right, exactly. The guide even suggests, like, focusing on your passions.
Oh, wait.
Even if you don't have, like, all the perfect words.
Yeah.
For example, instead of saying, I like music, you could say, music makes me happy.
That's good. Simple but effective.
Yeah.
It's like instant connection.
Right. They also give you some phrases for describing your job or your hobbies. But what I thought was really cool was this idea of sharing a fun fact about yourself.
Oh, yeah. Like that example they give, I can juggle 3 oranges.
It's quirky. It's memorable.
It makes you stand out, right?
Totally. Okay, listener, what's your fun fact? Think of something unique that'll make someone go, wow, tell me more.
So let's talk small talk.
Okay.
I know. Talking about the weather, it can seem so cliche. But hear me out.
Okay, I'm listening. Convince me. Why is small talk so important?
Well, for one thing, it's a low-pressure way to practice your English.
Yeah, true.
It's not like you have to give a big presentation or something.
You're not expected to be perfect.
Right. It's just making simple observations, asking questions.
Keeping the conversation going.
Exactly. And here's the thing. Small talk often leads to deeper conversations.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. You start by building rapport, finding common ground. Maybe you even discover, like, shared interests.
So it's not just about filling the silence.
Yeah.
It's about building that connection.
Exactly.
I like that.
They have some good examples of small talk starters, like, commenting on a piece of art at a party.
Yeah.
Or asking someone about their weekend plans.
But let's be real. Sometimes those generic conversation starters can be awkward. How do you make small talk more engaging? Less stiff?
I think the key is to be genuinely curious about the other person.
Okay, yeah.
Ask open-ended questions, get them talking about themselves, and actually listen to their answers.
It's like that saying, to be interesting, be interested.
Right.
I love that.
And don't be afraid to, share a little bit about yourself, too.
It's a two-way street.
Yeah, it's about finding that balance, listening and contributing to the conversation.
Okay, before we move on, I want to go back to something you mentioned earlier about nonverbal communication. The guide really stresses that even when you're talking about yourself, your body language matters.
Oh, absolutely. Things like making eye contact, nodding your head, using hand gestures, they can really change how your message comes across. It shows you're engaged,
You're present.
Right.
Like you're saying, hey, I care about what I'm sharing with you.
Exactly. And speaking of caring, let's talk about ending conversations gracefully.
Oh, that's a tough one. I always feel awkward, like trying to wrap things up.
Yeah, but this guide, it has some good tips for those farewells. First of all, be sincere.
Okay.
If you enjoyed the conversation, say so.
So it's not just about saying goodbye. It's about showing that you appreciated the interaction.
Exactly. And be specific about what you liked. Like, I really enjoyed hearing about your trip, or thanks for that restaurant recommendation.
That's so much better than just a plain bye.
Right. The guide also talks about giving a reason for ending the conversation.
Oh, especially if you're the one, initiating the goodbye.
Exactly. Like, hey, it was great chatting, but I have to run to a meeting.
Yeah. Or I should let you get back to work.
Yeah, it shows you respect their time.
You're not just ditching them.
Exactly. And finally, they talk about using a warm closing phrase. So instead of just bye, try something like, have a great day, or it was lovely talking to you.
It's like a nice finishing touch.
Right. It leaves a good final impression. Okay, so we've covered a lot in this deep dive. We've looked at tips for greeting people, asking for help, everyday scenarios, talking about yourself, even small talk, and how to say goodbye nicely.
Phew, it's a lot.
It is, but I think there are some great takeaways here that can help anyone feel more confident. In everyday conversations, no matter your English level.
And it's not just about memorizing phrases, right?
It's about understanding the logic behind the language.
Yeah.
And applying it to different situations.
So what's been your biggest aha moment so far? What are you most excited to try out?
We'd love to hear from you. But before we go, we have a final question for you to think about. Think of all the conversations, even short ones, you have every day. Which one in English feels the trickiest?
Like, I don't know, is it ordering coffee?
Mm-hmm.
Asking for help at a store? Or just chatting with a coworker, maybe?
Pick one that pops into your head.
Okay.
Now, think about the stuff we talked about today. How can those tips help you in that specific scenario?
Like using those power phrases for ordering food,
Mm.
or remembering to smile when you're asking for directions.
It's like having a whole toolbox full of communication strategies.
You just got to pick the right tool for the job.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And remember, practice makes perfect, right?
Oh, for sure.
So don't be afraid to use these tips, even if you make some mistakes.
Mistakes are how we learn.
Exactly. And hey, maybe even share your experiences with us. What worked well? What was tough?
We're all in this together.
Learning and growing. So keep practicing, keep experimenting.
And keep those conversations going.
I love it.
Well, that's a wrap for our deep dive into simple English conversations. We hope you learned something new.
And that you feel a bit more confident in your communication skills.
Remember, every conversation is a chance to connect
To learn something new.
and to really make a good impression. So go out there and start a conversation.
You never know where it might lead.
Until next time, happy chatting.